Shabbat Shalom, everyone. You know, this Torah portion has given many people trouble. A 13-year-old walks into your office, and the very first sentence of the Torah portion is, when a woman gets pregnant and has a baby, and they just go, oh. And then it talks about STDs and acne, and you just see them go, oh. So then the question becomes, why do we read this? Why don't we just skip it? Why don't we move on to something more interesting? And I think further, why do traditional Jews still honor some of the customs in this Torah portion? Menstruant women still do separate themselves from their husbands. So here is the theme of my sermonette today. I'll try to keep it short. I know it's been a long morning. Can we find meaning in archaic text and custom? And I would posit the answer is yes. So what is it about mitzvot, commandments, following God's commandments, that would cause us to continue to take interest in something so strange and foreign that we would read it at least once a year and torture 13-year-old boys with it? Well, you have to take a step back and look at the entire framework of mitzvot. Mitzvot for the Jews is a spiritual discipline. Some religions have fasting and meditation. Some religions have the rosary and confession. Other religions have sun salutations. The way that Jews have developed a spiritual discipline is through following God's commandments, because it's a daily opportunity to engage in something meaningful. It's a way of creating a microcosm, micro meaning small and cosm meaning world. It's a way to create a small world of meaning in day-to-day activities. People keep the mitzvot for many different reasons. For some, it's as simple as because God told me to. Others find that they feel connected to their ancestors and to their descendants. They like feeling that they're part of the chain of tradition. There are some who will tell you, I feel connected to Jews around the world. And indeed, there is a little spark of excitement when you meet a Jew from a foreign country and, hey, look, we both don't eat bacon. Right? You feel the connection. Some Jews keep the mitzvot, keep God's commandments because it makes them more ethical. And some Jews do it for that microcosm of meaning, for finding ways in day-to-day life through a small action that God has commanded to access the bigger question, which is, what are we all doing here? And through the mitzvot, we can experience big concepts like compassion, or patience, or transformation. Now, this works really well when it's a fun mitzvah. Most of us like the commandment to celebrate with the bride and groom. Most of us enjoy lighting Hanukkah candles. Where the mitzvot become a little more challenging is when they're inconvenient. Then what do? Let's take a mitzvah that the Brahmins have just experienced. There is a commandment that we say in the V'ahavta, V'shinantam levanecha. You should teach this to your children. Well, I wonder how much juggling you had to do with your work and social schedules to make sure that the boys got to their lesson on time. And I wonder how much persuasion you needed to do to convince them to study. This was not an easy mitzvah for you. And boys, you had to help your parents in this mitzvah because you can't teach it to your children if your children aren't receptive. So I'm wondering how many practices and games and time hanging out with friends you had to commit to being ready for today, which, by the way, you've been doing a lovely job. Yasher koach. So the question is, why would the Brahmins do this? This isn't the most convenient mitzvah. I would guess that it's filled with meaning for them, and that by moving through the challenge of doing something that is sometimes not so interesting or pleasant, they found that ultimately it was worthwhile. There are a lot of things in life that are like that, whether it's setting a goal and then being diligent about meeting it, or whether it's how we engage in relationship, because you can't just be there for the people you love when you want to be there. You have to be there for them when they need you, and that's not always convenient. So I would say that in this world of mitzvot, of commandments, part of the meaning is when you have to face the challenge of it not being terribly convenient. I'll use a concrete example, one that's hard for me, to help illustrate my point. I'll pick the mitzvah of refraining from cooking on the Sabbath, which has been the topic of much discussion in the Beth Torah community of late. So Jews are asked to refrain from cooking on the Sabbath. To clarify, that doesn't mean that observant Jews have to only eat cold food on Shabbat. You can warm up food that has already been cooked. But here's the catch. Because of how the laws are written and understood, you can't use a microwave. So you have to, at least in our family, what we do is we have an electric warming plate that we plug in before the Sabbath starts. So here's my challenge with that. First of all, I work a long week. I love my job, but it's demanding. So that means that since we host guests almost every Saturday evening, afternoon and evening, I have to make sure that I find time in my work week to cook a meal that's suitable for guests. That can be challenging. Then, and I know this doesn't sound like a hard thing, I have to remember to plug in the electric warming plate, because if I don't, the food will have no way of being heated. And I know it sounds like it's not so challenging, but you know that scene in Fiddler on the Roof where they're all scrambling to get ready before the Sabbath, and the mother says, "Hurry, children, hurry, the sun won't wait." That's what my house looks like every Friday. So it's a bit chaotic. And then finally, you have to make a guess based on the dish you've prepared for your guests when to put it on the warming plate, because if you put it on too early, it dries out. And if you put it on too late, it's cold, it's yucky. So the question would then be, Rabbi Zelony, aren't you supposed to rest and enjoy the Sabbath? You are a crazy woman, just go out to dinner and meet them at a restaurant. That would really be more pleasant for everyone. So here's why I persist, despite the inconveniences. When I have to plan ahead, I think that's a good life lesson. There are many things that if I plan ahead, they go much more smoothly. So when I experience irritation on Friday afternoon when I'm trying to get everything ready on time, I think to myself, no, this is a value in life, to learn to plan for what's a really nice Saturday afternoon, because by the time the guests arrive, everything's ready and we can just enjoy one another's company. And as for having to remember to plug in the hot plate through all the chaos of the Friday afternoon experience that is the Zelony household, that is a good lesson in reminding me that life is often chaotic, and it's important to learn to prioritize and concentrate on the one thing that must get done if you'd like the rest of the project to go smoothly. And as for having to eat food that's sometimes a little cool for, a pleasant eating experience, I find that helps me remember to relinquish control, and to remind myself once a week that as much as I like to think that I am in charge of everything, I'm really not. And that when I'm blessed with good fortune, I shouldn't be overly proud of that good fortune. And when I experience the sorrow of misfortune, that I don't run in an endless circle of guilties, if only, if I should have, if I would have, if I could have, when really there was nothing I could have done to prevent it. So by engaging in not cooking on Shabbat, what I'm really doing is creating a microcosm, a small world of meaning for myself, and reminding myself about the bigger lessons that there are to learn in life. By committing to this spiritual discipline, I'm constantly reminded of the bigger picture of what we're all doing here. So back to this week's portion. What did the rabbis, what did the old commentators have to say about when a woman gets pregnant and gives birth? They decide to create a microcosm of meaning too. I guess they also felt a little awkward about talking about all these things in the synagogue. And here's what they did with it. They compared the way a woman grows a life in her to the way that God gestated an entire universe. And they use it as a jumping off point to understand the ways in which humanity can be creative and the ways in which God can be creative. They found a whole world of meaning in that one sentence. That is why we continue to read archaic texts, and some of us choose to practice archaic customs, because we can find meaning in it. And so my blessing for all of us is that curiosity that I invited you to try when we first opened the Torah, and I said, I know this is a challenging portion. See if you can find one thing in it that you can relate to, is that we walk through life that way. Because if we can find it in an archaic piece of text, then maybe we can find meaning in the way someone else chooses to see the world religiously or politically. Maybe we can walk through life with our eyes open, searching for meaning. Ken Yehi Ratzon. May it be so. Shabbat Shalom.